dollars for the past 5 years based on these needs and goals set forth from council on how, giving us directive on how to use our funds. Also, we have our targeted communities that has been approved, and we have invested our a great deal of our funds in these targeted communities. We have 8 of them that we have listed there. So 85% of our allocated funds that we receive have gone into these targeted communities. Of course, we were required by HUD to utilize at least 70% of those funds to benefit low to moderate. But if you notice, we have been exceeding that. So we've been doing a real good job in managing those funds to assist the low to moderate income individuals.
Ms. Kilgore.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairwoman.
Yes.
Targeted redevelopment areas, the 7 communities, were those established previously, or are these continuing forward?
They were established previously. We have been working on those ever since 2019, I want to say, and we have added a little bit more, all the way up to the last, in 2020, when the last few was added to make it a complete listing as we have listed here.
When you presented this at a work session, wasn't it your recommendation that we narrow that focus?
Yes, sir. Yes, we recommend, staff recommend that we kind of narrow our targeted communities a little bit less than what we have listed here so we can make more of an impact on our entitlement dollars.
If I can add, Councilman Brennan, the current action plan is based on the consolidated plan we currently operate under. As you've heard us talk about reducing those areas, is looking at the consolidated plan we're getting ready to embark on.
Yes.
So does that plan we're getting ready to embark on have $5.75 million to spend, or is that?
So that's based on the past, the previous consolidated plan, and we're in the last year of it.
Okay.
And so just for clarity, for this current, we have one more year in the current 5-year, and that's where we need to spend this 5.7.
Understood.
Anything unspent, but it sounds like we need to spend every last penny of it, we will have new numbers to start off the next.
And is staff narrowing the focus of future funds currently to be brought back to council?
So staff have not narrowed necessarily.
Recommended, excuse me.
As part of when we embark on the upcoming consolidated plan cycle,
Yes.
we certainly will do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, is it 2.5 million or is it 5.7 million that has to be spent in the last year?
It's 2.5 in
2.5.
CDBG,
Okay.
Timeliness is just for the
Timeliness.
CDBG.
yes.
Okay.
So HUD actually does a testing in terms of how we're managing our CDBG dollars, and it comes through in May each year to see where we are in terms of disbursement of those funds. And so that's the reason why we are pretty diligently, and when it comes to allocating and assigning activities, that we feel pretty strongly that those activities will go through and close and complete.
Thank you.
I do want to point out as well, the HOPWA dollars are not limited to just city limits. It's a 6 county.
So we serve, I think it's six different counties. Kershaw, help me out, Dolly, because I've just gone blank in terms of the number. Richland County, Lexington County, Fairfield, and there's one more missing.
Saluda, I believe,
Saluda.
How did you forget Saluda?
and Calhoun County, yeah. So
Calhoun
those
County.
dollars are spread throughout 6
Yes.
counties. I just wanted to point that out as well.
And I think, I don't know if I know we talked about, because Missy and I even haven't done this for a while, the cycle is a little confusing, because it's sort of like this NOFA that the staff had to put out, a while ago for these funds, because they have to already go ahead and do that. Now that I know council's having some discussions about targeted areas and streamlining, And that's why we're saying for the next 5-year consolidated plan, hopefully these discussions you all are having now will inform that plan. We know that there's some discussions right now, but because that NOFA had to already be put out there, it won't necessarily, the timing of it doesn't necessarily go along with, like, if you wanted to say, we want to put these CDBG entitlement dollars towards some of the things you're currently discussing, it was already kind of off cycle with the HUD requirements of when you have to do a NOFA and all
Yes.
of those things. So we talked about doing a visual representation so we can all follow these cycles a little bit better going forward. So it's
We can
it's a little
certainly kind of do a
confusing.
cycle, kind of outline, just like Ms. Wilson said, we do have to plan ahead, because we have to put a NOFA out, and we generally do that in October for the next fiscal year. Okay, so
And I
we
think
kind of,
we're on timeline for that. We're ready for the next one. I think we've been
Very
planning to
good.
try to make sure that we
Awesome.
have the information, and it's critical for us to make sure we give the guidance ahead of time and not, when we start thinking of projects and so forth. So I think that.
Wonderful.
I think this year, the timeline will be solid,
Okay, perfect.
more solid.
Thank you. Okay, so just to outline our low to moderate incomes, kind of break it down on what it means and what it looks like in terms of the requirements of income in order to meet these eligibility of funding. And so we generally serve 80% and below the AMI. And so if you notice here, for a single person looking at taking advantage of any of our programs, they have to meet the LMI, which is $48,650 for a single person. And of course, for a family of 4, total household income cannot exceed $69,500.
And if you don't mind, Ms. Kilgore, I always like to emphasize this because a lot of folks, I think, sometimes don't understand what these numbers mean. And so to me, in order to qualify for what is considered low-income housing, a family of 3, which could very easily be 1 adult and 2 children.
Absolutely.
Very typical scenario. Well, that one person can make up to $62,000. And I think a lot of times folks automatically assume that maybe people aren't employed or make very little money. But in the state of South Carolina,
And these are everyday working people.
$60,000 is a very decent salary.
That's right.
And so, and the only reason I'm pointing that out is from my affordable housing hat, and where I'm trying to get as much information out to just everyday people to understand that low income doesn't mean no income.
That's
It
correct.
means lower than the area median income. So I'm glad y'all have this one in here.
Thank you. Yeah, these are people that work on many times in our service industries, and so it tap into a lot of folks that work in the restaurants, hotels, things of that nature, and teachers.
I
Can't be
was about to
teachers.
say teachers.
First-time teachers, college graduates,
A lot of city employees.
a lot of city
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah. And that,
Yes, they-
but it's very true, and the more we can all carry that message, I think the more helpful it is.
Thank you, Tina. So we have outlined our planned activities for the next fiscal year that falls upon this action plan. These are the subrecipients that we have that we are plan to award funds to in support of some of their activities. So we have a total of $374,000 to assist with these types of improvements, and these are the applicants that we have in place, and we're ready to award as soon as we get approval of the action plan.
Did you want to list the recipients?
Sure. So with our CDBG, we generally take out 20% from our entitlement as our admin costs. And we use that to support salary and other expenses within the department. Other subrecipient that we have that we will move forward to award is Mercy, which is Mental Illness Recovery Center. They are a longstanding partner of ours, have done extremely well in terms of managing their funds and providing service to individuals, as well as Fast Forward. Salvation Army, they have worked with us in the past. They took some time off, but they're back again, and so we are awarding them with some additional funds, along with Mental Housing Allowance Transitions, and they are a longtime standing partner of ours as well. They have utilized their dollars quite well in terms of spending all their dollars that we allocate. And then, of course, our departments, our Parks and Recs, we are allocating some funds to assist with the golf center, the Clyburn Golf Tee Center out there, along with providing some additional lighting for our Edisto project that Homes of Hope completed some new affordable housing units. I think it was a total of 29, I want to say. But now we need to light it up. So we're going to assist them with some of their lighting project with some street lights out there.
Does that, Madam Chairwoman, Ms. Kilgore, does that include lighting of the Edisto Court Park that is surrounded by that community? We'll have some lighting impacts in the park?
Yes.
As well? All right, thank you.
So a total of 374 will be allocated to those two activities. For our loans, our housing rehab, and we have funds set aside to assist with the admin, to assist staff in working our programs. Also, we have funds set aside to support our affordable housing loan program, particularly the one that we fund the entire purchase price of the home. We have allocated funds for it, hopefully to support 3 to 5 closing projects. And then also, we have funds still set aside for our SHINE. We're still working through all of our SHINE project applications, and so we hope to complete at least 10 of those projects. So we have $400,000 set aside for it, along with our City Linden 1, which is our uplift program, where we provide some additional down payment assistance to assist with closing costs. So we hope to assist and close at least 5 of those loans. And then, of course, our housing development. This is a new line item that we have set aside $308,000. We did that to support a multifamily type project. And so we want to provide some gap funding to provide an opportunity to create more units into the city. And so we have set aside $308,000 to assist.
And has this been allocated to a particular group yet?
It has not been allocated to a particular project or organization, but we do want to set aside just a little bit of money to assist with gap funding to help with those top projects and to encourage affordable housing units in the city of Columbia.
Madam Chairwoman, the gap funding under this federal CDBG is not a bridge loan, it's not reimbursable, it's truly a grant? Or would the developers reimburse over time for that gap funding of whatever comes out of that 1.3?
So generally, we are willing to grant a portion of it, but we're also looking to actually lend a portion of it as well at a 1% interest rate.
How's it determined which route we go?
We look at the
loan of 1% is probably going to be a bigger bang for the dollar when it comes to.
It's a bigger bang for us because the money comes back to us.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And it also probably provides for more units and more development.
Absolutely.
Of the units.
And many of these projects who submit for LIHTC funding, they're required for it to be a loan
Yes.
as well. So that helps with the point
scoring.
system for those projects.
Understood. Thank you.
So we have a total of $2.5 million set aside to assist with CDBG housing.
Okay, and then, so here's my question. Is this
Okay.
the same 2.5 that is the 2.5 that we need to spend. I got that.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Grand total. Okay, so for our home allocation, which is our home investment partnership program, we have funds allocated to assist with admin and operation, which is only 10%. That's the maximum amount we're allowed to receive from our entitlement to assist with salaries. And then, of course, we have $106,000 set aside for CHODOs, to support them with their affordable housing projects. And then, of course, we have $532,000 set aside for loans, any type of acquisition, rehab, new construction. So we'll be monitoring that pot of funds in regards to our projects, communication with our sub-recipients that we're looking at allocating funds to for projects that are in the beginning phase, it's just in case they need some additional funds to support those projects to ensure that they are closed and satisfied sufficiently. And then, of course, we have a estimated program income that we also will be managing in support of affordable housing. I would love to see we utilize those dollars to support our affordable housing loan program as we move forward, hopefully in the next few months, to build some new units that we can help buyers get into those homes. So we have a grand total of $1.3 million in home funds. So for our HOPWA program, we have outlined several sub-recipients that we have worked with in the past for many years, have been great partners of ours. They have made good use of those funds, and so we are looking to move forward to allocate some additional dollars to them for this next fiscal year. So we are set to allocate $1.8 million towards those sub-recipients. If you notice, they are with the Columbia Housing Authority, the Midlands Housing Allowance, which is Transitions, our PALS agency, which is the Palmetto AIDS Life Support Services, Corporate Ministry in Upper Savannah, along with the University of South Carolina. So next steps.
Real quick, Madam Chairwoman. Previous, the HOPWA, do they send their accounting of the funding back to the city or directly to HUD?
Back to the city. We do have to review their documentation to ensure that they meet eligibility of those funding sources.
Okay, thank you.
We have a robust compliance division that actually does that for us. Thank you, sir. So our next steps, as I mentioned, we are required to have 2 public hearings as regards to our next allocation of funds and how we're going to utilize those dollars, our activities. We've had our first hearing May 30th, which is last Thursday, and of course, our second hearing is today with our council members. So we're asking for approval from council to allow us to move forward with our annual action plan as outlined. Our deadline to submit it is June 30th. Of course, once we submit it, that's when we'll also move forward to award our subrecipient, as we have outlined their awards letter, notifying them that the city will be supporting them once again with their activities. And then our program year starts July 1st. And that's when we start dispersing funds and monitoring activities.
Very good. And this is a public hearing. Do we have folks who have previously signed up to speak?
No, ma'am, we did not provide a sign-in sheet for the public hearing, so we would ask individuals possibly to form a line, but we would also remind speakers that they will have 3 minutes to present their comments.
And we need them to give their name and address.
Full
if they
name,
come up.
yes, ma'am.
Full name.
That work?
All righty. And I have no clue. We have a nice audience here. I'm just not sure what everyone is here for. Are there any folks who are here? Do you want to say? Anyone here who wants to who has a comment on our HUD report that Ms. Kilgore just presented on how we'll be spending our CDBG Hopwa Home, I think that's it, is that the 3? Funds in the upcoming year. Called it's our last year of our consolidated plan. Going once, any comments? Going twice? All right, I think I can bring the public hearing portion to a close, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And I believe I just don't want to miss the request for authorization for community development to submit the plan to HUD.
Okay, and it is okay just for the committee to do it and not the full council?
I think that's what we need to.
Okay.
I was double checking to Councilwoman, but I think we did it this way previously.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all of those in favor of allowing community development to proceed with its annual action plan for 24-25, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Community development, can all the community development folks stand up? Just want to give y'all another hand. That's a lot of, y'all consolidated a lot of work. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. And I'm glad of the audience that we had today for it. All right, so next we'll move on to agenda item number 3. And I am going to invite up Mr. Patrick Mason and Mr. Sherwood Ford. Wait, no. Just Patrick Mason, I'm sorry, to discuss from a report from our Columbia Council of Neighborhoods.
Greetings, I'm Harrison Greenlaw, the president. Our strategic action plan was developed from its first inception with City Council, and Pat Mason has taken this project on and worked with it, so I'm going to ask him to come up and present it and answer your questions. Pat?
Thank you. Thank you, Harrison. It's a privilege to be here with you today, and just going to take a few minutes to share with you and then ask you to give us some feedback or questions about our Columbia Council of Neighborhoods strategic plan. Number one, we want to acknowledge Tina and Will for their time earlier this year to sit with us and encourage us to do this. It was a good move, and we felt like it was a right thing to do as a new leadership team at that organization. You know, it's a nonprofit organization. We all know that nonprofits are messy. They're not easy. The leadership comes and goes. So this leadership team is experiencing about 12 months under our belt, and we're real enthused to have spent about 80 leadership hours with about 18 to 20 people in a room to come up with a 3-year strategic plan. It's in front of you. You've had a chance to maybe look at it. We had the advantage of Will's recommendation to engage Ann Sinclair, who took us through the highs and lows of all that. Lots of papers taped up on the walls and ultimately transcribed into a pretty good document. So I can highlight just things that you would normally see in a strategic plan that relate to enrollment, right? We have 117 neighborhoods in Columbia, South Carolina, or thereabouts, and we're sitting right now at somewhere around 30 or 40, depending on who's counting and what the numbers are. So we intend to add 10 new neighborhoods a year as part of this plan over the next 3 years. We have 4 standing committees who have been assigned to work on this plan and to take hold of it and work it through, and then their committees come back to the executive committee and let us know what they think and what the timelines are and who's responsible for all of these line items that you see in front of you, so that we try to move forward in an organized way to have our relationship with this council and our county council be credible and resourceful. So that's one of the key things we'd like to do. And of course, digital is part of it. We had to start from scratch with a digital transition, meaning our website had to be rebuilt. Our newsletter, Constant Contact, has been employed to make sure we have good, strong communications and insightful news and announcements coming out to everybody that wants to hear about that kind of stuff. Financially, we're also wanting to make sure we're financially stable and that we have an annual budget that includes sources of funds, expenditures of funds, and justification for those funds. So we are a recipient of an anonymous grant to get us started in that way, and we're going to be looking for more of those kinds of sources.
And tell me, what's the name of the grant again?
There was an anonymous grant to the
Anonymous.
Columbia Council of Neighborhoods, yes. Yeah, right.
Thank you.
In the amount of $5,000, yes. So that has really helped us get started on what is usually at least a $5,000 project to mount a website, get a Constant Contact thing up and ordered, and so we did that for a lot less money. We got some money to spare in that regard. And it's not part of this presentation, but one of the conversations that comes up onwardly in the council is the Love Your Grant grant funding. And we know that that has been sort of set at $15,000 in the past. We feel like that's an opportunity for the city of Columbia and for the neighborhoods that want to get things done, who have no money. To get a $1,200 grant would be really helpful. I can speak on behalf of my neighborhood, Sherwood Forest, just east of Shandon. We have gotten our first $1,200 grant, and it's been expended, and we have 2 new gateway signs about to go in the ground. So we're kind of enthused about that. And there's 6 or 8 more signs coming behind that, thanks to county money and city money. So I'd put that on the table just for thought in terms of how you could add robust to the development of our neighborhoods and let those leaders find a way to spend that money in an effective way to engage and build their neighborhoods.
Madam Chairwoman, Pat, is CCN set up to be the fiscal agent for, say, neighborhoods that don't have a nonprofit status if they wanted to engage those funds?
We are not. That's a possibility. There's pros and cons to that, Will. Being entangled in that can be a little sketchy at times. We'd be glad to facilitate that, and we feel like an EIN number is something we could help people get. You know, that seems to be a hurdle for some neighborhoods that have never done this kind of thing before. Taking additional responsibility in terms of that
Proposal
conversation would be,
invoice payments.
yeah, a little bit, at our point. At some point, it makes sense to have somebody being able to, I can tell you that I started a nonprofit in 1986, and we went to the Municipal Association, and they helped us do that. And there was not a problem with that group and the leadership there. So it can happen, it's just a little sketchy right now, sir.
Thanks for that feedback.
You're welcome.
And I just wanted to add along those lines too, for a certain amount where you just need, and you would need to talk to accountants as well as lawyers, tax lawyers, but with a certain amount, you just need to have nonprofit status, not necessarily 501c3 status.
Okay.
And so I think some folks think they may have to have 501c3. I believe, double check, but if you're receiving less than maybe $5,000 a year, and I don't know, but there's a number, a threshold where you don't, you can be a state nonprofit and folks can still get their write-offs. But there's once you hit big numbers, they want you to have the 501c3 and the additional
Got it, yeah, thank you,
requirements.
yeah.
You heard of that?
Any other questions, or any other thoughts on that plan? I can just assure
Madam
you.
Chairwoman,
Yes,
you mentioned y'all want to add 10 new neighborhoods a year.
yes, sir.
In the last, I would say, 3 years, has there been a decline in neighborhood membership with CCN?
Apparently so.
Is there a strategy, I guess, or a plan to engage those neighborhoods that recently rolled off, or are y'all looking for to bring in new neighborhoods who have not been a part of CCN?
Both. There is a standing committee that's involved in enrollment and re-enrollment and retention, and they're going to focus on exactly what you said, making sure we're doing a good job to retain those neighborhoods that have stepped up and to seek out and talk to and in some way, effective way, enroll them in the advantages and why. We have a nice list of why you should join us. And what does it mean to you as a leader in your neighborhood, in your residents, to become part of a bigger voice? So that when we come to speak to our elected leadership, we have a thoughtful and well-organized conversation. So yes, to answer your question, that's one of the 4 committees, and it is a priority of CCN to do that.
Thank you. And one other question. I remember there being talk about a plan possibly to engage new neighborhood leaders, younger leaders, to build them up. Is CCN taking any action on that?
I think that would be part of the enrollment plan. I can't remember, I love the word youth. We need to have young leaders be familiar with and willing to and capable of coming forward. And I think you're an example of that, exactly. I mean, we need the next generation to be here with us and to play an effective role and feel comfortable doing it. So to say that we have a plan in writing right now, but no, but youth is important. And we have on our executive committee a young fellow who is, I'm pretty sure under 25, right? Who's with us, and John Tyler is very big part of the team, and he's got a lot of other plate spinning, including his career, but he's there with us, and so they're, yeah, looking for more of that. Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate all the work y'all do.
Thank you.
CCN.
Any other questions from committee members?
Madam Chair, if I might, while the leadership was here from CCN, one of the things that the staff and I wanted to bring up, and Chief Holbrook, she had to run to another meeting, but Major Chris White is here, but we often, as it's coming up soon at the end of the summer, the National Night Out kickoff event that many of our neighborhoods enjoy, National Night Out, obviously, and we always work with the neighborhoods, and you all visit, and it's just a great night. The kickoff event in recent years has been much less attended. To be quite frank and honest, it's become more of an event that's a lot of heavy lifting for our police department and planning and resources being spent. But we notice it's more of just us staff there. And we heard from a few council members last year about that as well. So the thought this year is to maybe not have the kickoff event, and we just wanted to softly kind of get some feedback on that. But I do hear loud and clear that some of our neighborhoods, some of the bigger neighborhoods, they're able to resource the actual National Night Out event pretty well. But some of the smaller neighborhoods historically maybe could use $200 or $500 or whatever it might be to help them. We thought, and we won't be able to do a lot, but we were thinking maybe it would be money better spent if we possibly had some little grants to go towards the actual National Night Out activities for neighborhoods that really truly need it. We wouldn't be able to do it, of course, for every neighborhood, versus continuing to put all that time, resource, energy, money into a kickoff event that isn't really actually attended quite as well anymore. And it's hot, and we know lots of people have things that they're doing with their children, or whatever the reasons might be at the end of the summer. But that's kind of our thought process, and we haven't made a final decision on that, but we wanted to get a little feedback.
Well, one of the things I'll note, from us or from CCN?
Well, from both, yeah.
Well, one thing I will say too is, I don't know if it has the same, and I can't think of the right word, but I have several neighborhoods who are now doing National Night Out in October.
Yeah, well, that's come up too.
So I don't know how effective a kickoff, in August is for those who do it in October. And that's a new thing that I'm kind of hearing, but because of the heat, and of course for us, we just want them to get it done. And then of course, I'm always mindful of staff and staff time and best use and effectiveness. So off the top of my head, and I don't think I had a problem with it last year, But I do believe as more and more neighborhoods, and I don't know if this is a trend or if this is just something folks are trying for a year or two, but as more and more decide to do October as opposed to August, I think it does, it impacts the need for having the kickoff in August is
Okay.
the best way I can say it.
And I don't speak on behalf of all of the neighborhoods, but I would say that from my experience, better spent money, no kickoff, put that money in grants to neighborhoods that could easily apply. Maybe it's part of the Love Your Block grant thing that could be worked out. And put that money down at the grassroots where they'll find a way to rally and engage their neighbors in their best way. And when I went to the last kickoff, it was very successful, nicely done, and not attended.
Right.
So I think you're onto something.
Okay, well, we'll kind of follow
Are we taking,
up on that.
are we taking public comment? I'm looking at both
Thank
of
you.
our-
I got one- I got one
Thank you
question.
so
Pat,
much.
Pat,
Thank you.
I got one more last question for you, Madam Chairwoman.
Absolutely.
So Objective 1, develop annual budget, outline revenue expenses. It says you're going to give us, you're going to submit some funding requests, how to streamline communications and have annual revenues for CCN. Have you submitted those to
We have
staff?
not. I'm not sure exactly the process for that, but I would take your coaching on that. If I know the time is right now if we want to get something done. So if
I
there's,
would defer to Ms. Wilson, the best way, avenue for them to submit.
I'm glad to hear that because we do have some big ideas here and we will, you be assured, we will put them to good work, those dollars. So if there's a proper way to apply for specific line item funding, we would be happy to do that in a timely fashion.
Is the need more about the Love Your Block grant funding, or is this addition? Because
Yeah,
I was going to also add, Mr. Brennan, that we obviously are in the budget season now. The council knows that once the budget is passed, we do fund balance, we come back, we kind of put some things to the side, and we have another session with council. And one of those items is already about beefing up the Love Your Block
Thank you.
grant line item. But if there are others, then I would just suggest that you email myself and Missy Kaufman. I know some of you work with her, our Budget and
Okay.
Program Management Director.
Be glad, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And for those of you who may have raised your hands, I forgot that the public comment portion has been closed. I was advised by the clerk. So next on the agenda, we have committee discussion. And looks like I have the first agenda item, 5-year real estate strategy, how to activate city-owned vacant lots. Some of our mayor, oh my goodness. Councilman Bailey, I was trying my best to be, I was trying to get it right, I'm sorry. Councilman Bailey may not have been here, but Councilman Brennan and I were on the Community and Economic Development Committee in 2022, and one of the things that Mr. Taylor emphasized was really putting together a 5-year real estate strategy. And as we are looking at a lot of the properties that the city has, we want to, I just kind of want to make sure we didn't forget about that. And some of the things, I want to refer this to staff with a couple of discussion points because I think it's critical to a lot of the different discussions that we're having. And so, and I'm going to discuss it, but I'm going to give it to you because I did write it out. First, we're looking at, and I'm assuming that y'all can check, economic development will be handling the commercial portion or are working on it. I haven't kept up with economic development. They are. Okay, so economic development has been working on the commercial side, and so it seems that we should be working on the residential side too. But here are some categories I wanted us all to kind of think about. We have city-owned property. Then we also have city demolished property that we don't own. We have vacant lots, and we've had some discussions about those. We've recently started talking about, well, not recently, but we've discussed investment buyers. And then we have rental versus purchase issues. And the key point for me is essentially, where can the city actually control some things? Because we cannot control all aspects. But for us to try and figure out where we can control, and then versus maybe where we can advocate. Someone sent me, I don't think they're here, someone sent me an ad or something where they listed neighborhoods not to live in the city of Columbia. Now, I may not be able to change and tell folks not to say that, but maybe we can advocate, or maybe we can give more information, because, of course, some of those neighborhoods were in my community. And so of utmost would be, of course, what we can control. And I think the other part, too, is a knowledge, let's looking at, from a knowledge perspective, information perspective, a lot of folks expect the city to solve all issues, but we can't. And so I think that if we can outline here the 1, 2, 3 things that we know we can do in the housing space, specifically with respect to the property that we own or the ordinances, and it's same but different, then we need to get back to that. And Will, since you're on both committees, you would be a good person to kind of tie those two. I'm sorry, Councilman Brennan, since you're on both committees, maybe you can help us make sure that those are kind of like on a parallel track. Is that?
Residential, commercial?
Yes. So that we're kind of, because we do need to, where possible, apples to apples, oranges to oranges.
Absolutely, and I think we've been talking about it for years. Staff is pushing in that direction, putting our real estate inventory to better use
That's
for
it.
the quality of life of our
Yeah.
residents.
Right.
And how do you really leverage, say, these vacant parcels that we own?
Wait, say that one more time. Will said, no, really, Councilman Brennan said that so much more better than I did. Say that one more time.
It's leveraging the bricks and mortars, the parcels that we as a city, as a local government own. How do we put those back into the hands of the neighborhoods to create that quality of life? To promote livability in all neighborhoods. The city owns a lot of vacant parcels, a lot of houses citywide. And if we can leverage funding, say from CBDG, if we can partner with nonprofits, it's something we've been talking about for years, so it's just putting it into motion. So I appreciate you bringing that up today.
Right, and thank you. And I think that's because we're having, we're in a season where there are so many great ideas. Is that a fair way? And so we had a meeting last week, and we have, as council, we have so many different ideas that at some point, we want to make sure that we all are working towards, we know what we're working towards, and we know what the resources are. The essential part that's kind of connected to this committee would be with the numbers that community development is talking about, where do we focus those dollars? Where do we not? Where is it better to get private sector funding or leverage banks versus where is it easier to use federal dollars? I know one thing that we always hear is there's a lot of work involved in us using federal dollars for some projects. Some projects truly are easier if we don't use federal dollars. And so if there is a bank or foundation, but other alternatives, then that would be helpful. And I think that we just want to kind of get to where we know where we all can go. And I think the beauty of it is it will allow everyone to do their thing. Does that make sense, Ms. Wilson? Like, I think we can put it together where we know we will have a strategy and everyone will be able to see how all of their things connect, but everyone gets to do their thing. And I think the other part too is in them being able to be committed to it, because we cannot change. I know it wreaks havoc when we change every year to a different strategy. and tell staff, well, no, we want to make this a priority now, and shifting. If we really want to see real change in our communities, I think it's going to take a specific strategy and giving staff what they need so that they can just work it out and not have to figure out. And of course, things will always change, but a roadblock is so much easier just to follow through and check the boxes and implement.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. I think that you mentioned the Economic Development Committee and kind of this parallel path. In that committee, the focus, as Mr. Brennan touched upon a little bit, has been more of the city-owned properties that we are trying to, we're streamlining, how we work and moving into a new facility on Main Street where we will be sharing that even more so with the public, but it's common knowledge now that, we'll have a municipal complex. So that allows us to pull in city offices that have been spread out across the city, but then by doing so, it allows obviously for us to work better together and be in one location and all those benefits of that. But what it also does is it allows city-owned properties to be put back on the tax rolls because we'll be coming out of certain facilities, and as you've as our citizens will see the benefits from a real estate and marketing perspective with the economy that we're in right now, activating spaces downtown and using those spaces in a way that also adds to that quality of life. But maybe it's multifamily comes into the downtown corridor. There's all kinds of product, I think, that people are looking for, whether it's for seniors, whether it's for young professionals, empty nesters, whatever it might be. So we want to be producing opportunities for the product if the city resources from facility standpoint can add that back into the marketplace. Simultaneously, you're talking about the housing. So if we're able to help with that stock, the opportunities with developers, investors, et cetera, it does inform, I think, some of the things you're talking about in this committee from a housing perspective, because we're trying to create those opportunities simultaneously. And that discussion is happening more, I think, in the Economic Development Committee and with our real estate professionals based off our own city properties.
Right.
There are also opportunities that I think you're talking about where the city may get involved with certain big catalyst projects. We talked in your recent retreat about some opportunities in certain corridors of the city where the city could potentially get involved to help facilitate some of those bigger, what we've referred to as mixed use, multifamily perhaps, but also retail, but bigger parcels, not just the infill with the lots. Right. That's more about the housing, what you're talking about in this committee. I think that commercial aspect has also been discussed in the Economic Development Committee. So yes, we welcome the direction. I think there are multiple conversations happening. They're all, I think, from my aspect, just trying to have that guidance that we're pulling in the same direction with those things.
And it kind of reminds me of, although, so for instance, I remember, and I won't try and remember what year, but I remember we focused on houses in an area, for some reason, maybe it was Booker, Washington, but we did the facade on Beltline because we paired those resources in the same area to kind of have the impact. And then we also, we have to remember we have our housing authority too, but
Right.
I like the ability for people to see what we're doing. I think it's really important because we do a lot of work, but when it's spread out and in different places, sometimes people really can't see it. And so I also want to look for a way where folks can really say, the city really did that whole area over there. And then it helps you see what maybe your community can be. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. And for those of y'all that don't know, I used to be former staff. And it just helped when we kind of knew where we were going and how we made our decisions going forward. So I'm hoping that it is something that will be helpful. It'll also help us with the 5-year consolidated plan. So it all kinds, do you see where I'm going at? But I'm trying to make sure we all know where we are, so then we know how funds can be used. Any other comments or questions? I will say Ms. Wilson and Mr. Brennan have been doing this a little bit longer, so y'all are a lot more articulate.
Madam
I'm
Chairwoman.
glad y'all got the spirit.
Madam Chairwoman, this may be a question directed at staff. Could somebody give me some information on how overlay districts can be used to support a corridor's goals? Whether it's looking at creating an overlay district where some of these vacant lots are, or house inventory, or where there's been, displacement, things of that nature. Is anybody here from planning who can answer that?
Well, we have some, so like North Main Corridor has an overlay, is planning here? It's some, and then some neighborhoods have them too. So there are ways, and that could be recommendations that come out. A lot of them, is someone really gonna make me
So I'll
be as articulate as possible?
We don't have anyone from planning here today. A lot of times your overlay districts in the sense of design elements are really laying out what you can and can't do. We are in the process of going through revamping our downtown and our Vista overlay district. Y'all are part of that process, so we welcome your input in that as well. I'd love to talk to planning staff to get their take on how overlays could be used. We do have, historic overlays and preservation type overlays. Those really aren't used in a way that activates vacant lots, but I'd love to get their take on that. They're really creative staff and team, and we can look at that as well. I do want to add, we've been doing a lot of work in this area with the vacant lots. It really is a programmatic, you got to attack it from all ends, from financial literacy, which we do partner with banks, and we provide ourselves home ownership readiness, because part of it is getting people ready and making sure they understand, but also the people who are not ready, helping guide them through the process of being ready for that loan. And then pre-approvals, and that's really been what's been leading up to today, where we believe we've got enough pre-approvals where we're ready to build some houses. We focused in 2 of our communities, predominantly because we have more lots in those communities than in others, but all of our vacant lots we want to activate. But we really need people ready to buy and ready to own, because there's a difference in buying and actually being ready for what that means. So we want to put all that together and promote that.
And I'm sorry, Councilman. And I guess just, really not want to get too much in the weeds, but to Councilman Bailey's point about an overlay, some of what I think we hear and what we are trying to be very transparent about as staff is the balance of the community being engaged with what we're about to do. I think we're at this very point now where this council is saying, hey, we're right there. We want all the dots to be connected. We want it to be in the targeted areas that we identify. We want it to flow with whatever comes out of the consolidated plan discussion. We want things to connect well. And in the process of that, we want the community to have input. I think there's still that balance between when you have developers on the ready to do something, and I don't know if that's where you're getting at this discussion on the front end about overlays, and if you have a developer on the ready, if you have the community and neighbors engaged in what's about to happen, have they given input that an overlay suggests something about the density or what the product will look like? And I think that may at times have gotten us to some stops and starts, because you may have people, investors, who might want to do some things, and we may have city funds where we're also, or maybe even the equity of the land with these parcels that are available, or the infrastructure that from a water and sewer perspective the city can provide. And you're right, they're ready, but then if community or neighbors feel like they may not want duplexes, or they may want a single family only, I'm not sure if that is part of the discussions that y'all are getting at. Like, how much of that do we need to double down on for certain corridors or certain neighborhoods, and does that require some type of overlay? I'm not sure if we're answering your questions.
No, I
sir.
mean, y'all are answering my questions. I think my question regarding overlays was about if a new overlay or overlay districts could be created to help, further the goals for certain areas. And so I don't want to get ahead of the agenda, but just like with affordability aspects of vacant lots, or when it comes down to new development and looking at the city where we are as a whole to figure out if our overlay districts are holding us back, similar to the question that was raised regarding the Vista, or if we may need to implement a new overlay district for areas that are experiencing some change that may be causing more harm than good. So that was my question about how are overlay districts used to further the city goals and the community goals?
And what I can say too, so anybody from Greenview here? Greenview, I think it's okay for me to say, they have been trying to decide if they want to get some type of overlay, because they want to preserve, but it's not necessarily architectural, but they want to preserve. I think ultimately the goal is to preserve as many single-family homes as possible, pretty much. However, our zoning also addresses that, but I think they want to see what they can do to enhance that. We've had some discussions, I think that I've talked to planning, and what we're going to do is set up some follow-up for education for the people in the neighborhood, because of course, they are the ones that are going to make that decision. I also have, what's the other neighborhood? Seminary Ridge. They did one because they were trying to preserve it, and they realized, whoa, this is too much of a burden on the neighbors, so then they kind of pulled it back. So if you're talking about neighborhood or a corridor, I think the processes are a little bit different on who all you get involved. I think that the North Main corridor, there's an overlay. And depending on who you are, you like it. Depending on who you are, you don't. I thought I was going to get an amen from over there. But because they're there to preserve. But with respect to your question, Ms. Wilson, I do believe that a part of this discussion and the strategy overall is even looking at our lots and what portion. I don't mind saying I could not see every portion going to multifamily. I can see, okay, how can we negotiate where certain portions have to stay single-family homes to line up with multifamily homes, depending on the area. But then we also realize we got to look at every single neighborhood separately to kind of see what works for one neighborhood will not work for another neighborhood. So I don't think it's as simple as a commercial, but I think we can find a way. But that's kind of the discussion I want us to move into, is trying to facilitate those discussions so that, again, we have different folks working on different things, and I'm not talking about your stuff, but we have different folks, different council folks working on different things, and we can all do it, but we all need to know what we're doing for budgetary concerns and where to find the money from to get it done. Am I making that more complicated, or?
Probably.
Let me cut my mic.
We're just listening intently, and we're trying to,
Okay.
take your lead, but guide as well. So
Madam Chairwoman,
Yes.
I think there are some parallels with the commercial and the residential. Anytime that the city of Columbia is financially involved in a property we own, that allows us the vision on how that parcel moves forward, whether it's a 60,000 square foot building in 5 Points, what's the end user in that? What do we want to see? Office, foot traffic, people that are going to go spend money in restaurants, really enjoy the downtown core. Or if it's an empty parcel in a neighborhood, we are invested in that, and we want the neighborhood to be invested in what the ultimate vision is of the use of that property. So I think it's two different things. If the city's involved, the neighborhood's going to
Absolutely.
get the product that they want. Now, if it's private investment that comes in, then that's where the issue lies, that I think Councilman Bailey's talking about. So I think we can put some self-guidelines in place as we move forward with our development process, if we are involved in parcels. So I just want to assure the public that we are thinking in that mindset.
Again, Councilman Brennan very well stated, and that's why they have him on both committees.
Madam Chairwoman, I know the public commentary portion is over, but Pat keeps raising his hand over there. I keep seeing him. I'm not sure, Madam Clerk, if protocol allows for some exception, is there an opportunity for somebody to give me a comment? If I'm off base, let me know. I am the new person, so I'm off base a lot.
That is certainly up to the chairwoman.
Madam Chairwoman, I'm sorry.
An extension of the CCN presentation suggestion.
As an extension of the CCN presentation, Mr. Brennan, you are correct. So is this an extension of the CCN presentation?
I just wanted to commend the conversation about leveraging existing assets of the city for quality of life, and this is a wonderful conversation. I would also encourage you and express thanks for the code enforcement part of the conversation. Maintaining the quality of life in our neighborhoods includes doing what we said we're going to do in the code and having your teams come forward in the way they do it. They've been really trained to get Pat Mason to put his garbage on the right side of the street, kind of thing, right? As well as do some things in our Sherwood Forest neighborhood that really have made a difference. So I commend that part of and parcel of the quality of life, and I'm pretty confident that all the neighborhoods in the council would agree with that. So thanks for that, the effort and the money you put behind that team of code enforcement folks. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Herbert, I did send you a text message. I believe that if individuals have feedback that they want to share with you all, if they would like to email cityclerk@columbiasc.gov, I'll be glad to share those with the members of council and city administration.
And can you say that email address again?
Cityclerk, one word, @columbiasc.gov.
Okay.
Thank
you. And I do know that we have a long agenda today, and we're trying to get through as much as possible. I'm going to make number 5 as short, very, very short, affordability requirements for city-owned properties. So this is something that I had legal to look at for us. If we have property that has any type of federal dollars in it, there is language that we have to include that the federal government requires us to use. And a example would be provision of housing. The recipient agrees that the dwelling shall be used solely for the purposes of providing housing to members of very low and lower income households. And that is dictated, of course, by the funds that are used going into the property. What I would like to work with staff on is similar language for the houses that the residential properties that we own. We already have a template, but for talking points, one of the questions, and there's a lot of research out there, but for instance, there's some places that may say, if any of the city funds are used, then we want to make sure that, for the next 99 years or so, this home must be sold to someone making, and I personally am thinking like maybe 120 AMI, but to have some type of, we don't want to go from our $62,000 a year person in 2025 who gets a great offer from someone making $500,000 in 2 or 3 years. And that is how we preserve the makeup of the community. And so because we kind of have the language that we're already using as far as city-owned property, I didn't want to bring that back to you all, but I didn't want to just throw it out there. But that's kind of where we're going with that, and I didn't know if anybody had any questions or concerns about that, or any immediate heartburn about putting affordability requirements for the long term for some of the homes, particularly the ones that we're going to sell.
Madam Chairman, I would just defer to city legal to research that for us. Second-generation sales, if those entitlements can be passed along to that, that's a city legal question, I think.
Okay. And I've had some of them, like they have to remain affordable 40 years, 50. I've done some research, but I'm not trying to read all my research.
Well, and I do want to add, when we make a loan for affordable housing, we also have a requirement that it remains owner occupied, which also helps in that light. So
Right.
we'd love to explore your thoughts and work together to,
Right.
for the period that they remain in the home, it has, for the period of the loan, it has to remain
Right.
owner occupied. If they were to sell it, they would have to pay back the.
And again, and for me, that kind of just goes back to, as you were saying, Councilman Brennan, whatever we can do with the properties that we own, trying to make sure that we have a variety of options, some definitely with affordability if they're in communities that really qualify for affordability. Does that make sense, Ms. Wilson? Okay. I'm making sure. Next, we have, make sure I got everything on that one. Ryan Coleman. Ryan said that he was going, Mr. Coleman told me that he was going to be 30 seconds. So Ms. Clerk, do the timer, because he said he was going to bring us up to, to speed.
I didn't include the part where you asked me 3 minutes of questions, though.
Let me cut my mic off.
Okay. Tina and I work together at the OBO, so we've got
have
that.
history.
We have history. Yes, ma'am. So I just wanted to give everyone a quick update on the Let's Build Together seminar. We talked about this a little bit last month, but we're hosting this event tomorrow morning. It'll be from 8:30 to 10 o'clock, and it'll be at the Eau Claire Print Facility, which is located at 3907 Enzer Avenue. We sent out about 50, 60 letters to property owners a few weeks ago, inviting them to come out to attend. And basically what we want to do is just provide some information to them, about things like zoning overlays along the North Main corridor. We want to get people thinking about the opportunities, to rehabilitate and revitalize some of these properties where maybe it's a building that hasn't been utilized in a while, or maybe it's an empty lot. There's a tremendous amount of walkability and opportunity along the North Main corridor, and so we just want to have some dialogue with property owners and, let them know about things such as zoning, talk with them about opportunities such as, the opportunities, commercial revolving loan fund, facade grant programs. 2 years ago, we did a raft of business-friendly improvements that removed things like impact fees and some of the parking requirements. And so really, it's just to create some engagement and discussion with the property owners, help inform them about some of the opportunities, and get them thinking about what their intent is with the property in the long term. And if they want to hold that property and continue to own it, that's fine. But if there's a chance for them to, develop, rehabilitate it, put it into use, maybe put a good business into service, we'd like to explore that conversation with them as well. So we did an available property search a few weeks ago, and there's only one property that I could find that was listed along that corridor. It's right there near the Trestle Building, and it's a small space, 800 square feet. So just beginning of some dialogue.
Very good, and I forgot, CEZ has one space on Huffman Road, in the Huffman Building, but essentially it means we need those vacant properties because we don't have anything available to lease on the North Main corridor. So my goal is to engage and help folks if they need some assistance in figuring out how to put something in those vacant properties and get them moved. So I appreciate your help tomorrow. And I have to make my 3 calls. I know, I'm gonna make them today. I'm gonna make them today. Anybody have questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan. I
Thank you all.
appreciate you.
You're welcome.
And we're doing real good, y'all. Mobile market update with Miss Aisha Driggers and Juneteenth event planning.
Yes, so I will also be brief. Good
You
afternoon.
get one, you get two, 1 minute per item.
So we did provide a mobile market update last month, and we'll probably provide another one next month. But just to tell you where we are, we did have to move from the Hyatt Park location. Those bathrooms are under construction. We tried North Main Plaza, but the visibility wasn't that great. So yesterday, they tried the corner of Courtright in North Main,
I saw
which is still nearer Hyatt Park, and they had great participation yesterday, one of their best ones since the launch at that location. They said they had a couple people actually pass it to make a U-turn.
Well, no, that's what I was about to say because I saw it on the way home.
Okay.
I said, oh, we got a different area. So no, I think that's a good location.
Yeah, I spoke with Larry yesterday. He said he had one customer come that morning, then go get her neighbor and come back that afternoon. So that was very positive. We like to see that. There may be some grading issues, so I'm going to go look over there because it's right behind the bus station, but we'll check that out. But it looks like that might be a better option for them.
Aisha, for the storefront, have their signage issues been addressed?
I believe so, but I will follow up with the Farmers Market Exchange. Also, the Edgewood Library location, we're going to move that in front of the former Save-A-Lot. We did get permission from the owner of that property. Again, we think the road visibility will assist with that, even though that is one of their best locations. But that is right across from the Housing Authority and Drew Wellness Center, so we will move that one on June 13th. So next week, we'll move that location.
And I do think that visibility, I asked you for some of the cards because I have had folks saying, well, we haven't seen the mobile market. So I think that as we can find more visible spots so that folks can no longer, and I think it's working already because I saw it, and I'm sure it was North Main Street, so everyone saw it.
And he still has some walk-ups too at
Yeah.
that location.
I think that the visibility is important for the concept of the mobile market, because I've gotten some calls, but I have your postcards, and I'm going to give them to some folks
Yeah.
so they can know where they are.
Yes, and I would encourage them to also follow them on social media too, so they can see if there's any additional pop-up locations that will be available throughout the week. In addition to that, we'll start at the Comet Central location in July. So we have gotten approval. We've spoken with our parking staff to see where we can set up. And so that will begin in July on Tuesdays.
I like it.
So hopefully during our next meeting, I'll be able to, yes, you can
Oh, I
walk.
thought you were going to say we will walk over it. Never mind.
So, Ms. Triggers, Madam Chairwoman, that is in mid-July, you said?
Yes,
Will you reach out to Ms. Pamela about the marketing campaign to go around the ridership for that
yes, sir,
y'all, I think, discussed in that first meeting?
yes.
She will really put it out.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Also, next time we meet, I will provide an update regarding the education piece that we discussed last month. We have reached out to DHEC. They have a 7-team education branch of DHEC led by Ms. Farah, that they offer prep classes and recipes. They've actually purchased produce from the mobile market to take to do their prep classes. So we think that'd be a great partnership to attach the education piece to the mobile market.
Madam
you-
Chairwoman, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if you need me to help teach some people to
Okay.
cook, I can assist.
Madam Chairwoman, I believe the city's going to be starting their summer camps pretty soon.
Yep.
I would like to see if the mobile food market could look into that education aspect with the kids and showing them the different fruits and vegetables early before they get 16 and only like French fries.
Now, I
Yes,
could
sir.
really help with that because the young kids might eat my food.
Right, I agree. And so we have started discussions with Greenview because they have a lot of summer participation at Greenview. And the Larry Schneenberger from the mobile market said that he will help them with like tomato plants and things like that to help them grow. So yeah, that's a great idea, but we'll talk to the other camps as well. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We'll reach out to Belfield as well. So that's my update for the mobile market. Do you have any other? I know that was probably more than a minute.
I forgot to, you did wonderful. Go ahead.
Okay. So regarding Juneteenth, that event is designed to celebrate, educate, and inspire by honoring the legacy of Black entrepreneurship, culture, and art through film and television. Those events will be held on Tuesday, June 18th, and Wednesday, June 19th. On the 18th, which is Tuesday, we'll have the Entrepreneurial Summit, sponsored by OBO, where we will offer some breakout sessions and some fireside chats with guest speakers. And then on Wednesday, actual date that we observe Juneteenth, there'll be a Cool and Strong matinee for kids in the afternoon at the Nick. And then in that afternoon, that evening at 5 o'clock, we will do the premiere of the Historic Black Business District at the Nick Theater again. That's narrated by Dr. Donaldson. Then we'll walk down to the Columbia Museum of Arts and have the gala with a reception and live entertainment. So we're looking forward to that. That will be an exciting event for us.
Looking forward to it.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Great job.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Will has a meeting, so we got to our last thing. I am going to turn it over to Mr. Tyler Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The last item on the agenda is the review of a referral to establish an ad hoc committee. And first, I'd like to thank Mayor Rickman and all the City Council of voting in favor of referring this issue to community development to consider the establishment of this ad hoc committee that will focus on student rentals, gentrification, and investor ownership. We just talked in our 5-year plan about our target areas. A lot of the target areas are experiencing some of the challenges with growth concerning some of the, I think, item points that the ad hoc committee would delve into. Inside the packet, there is a kind of a timeline and overall purpose and plan with the ad hoc committee. And I think at this point, I would like to get guidance from staff on the best way to move forward with getting community participation from these corridors that are experiencing challenges with investor ownership, student rentals, and displacement and unintended displacement, but also looking at what ways we as a city with our planning department, our community development, economic development, we could all look at how we could further the city's goals of continuing to grow, but making sure we're addressing the issues that we have been experiencing in the city. And I think this is a good sign so we could all grow together, whether it's a task force or an ad hoc committee. But I think there needs to be some more conversation, maybe in this committee or with entire council, on what the best way is for that. My understanding that if there is going to be an ad hoc committee, it would need to go back to full council and for a vote for appointments of the participants on the ad hoc committee. And then I'm also have an understanding that if we wanted to have a task force, which is something separate, we would have citizen appointees to that task force who could provide recommendations on what either the committee, community development, or the ad hoc committee could look into. And specifically, what I want to see is data collected, not just people going off of emotions about how they feel about certain areas, but looking at the data to see, whether it's you have non-owner occupied properties or out-of-state investors who have purchased empty lots. Looking at all the data and then figuring out what policy can be developed from there that supports the city and council's goals on how we want to grow moving forward. And so I would like to open up the discussion with my colleagues, but with city staff as well, on the best means to further the goals of, or the heart of what I had in this referral with this ad hoc committee.
And Ms. Wilson, I can help you out too. So one of the things we were discussing, two different ways that things have been done before. With short-term rental, we had the council ad hoc committee. Make sure
That's correct.
And it was just council folks, but we had meetings just like we have here, versus how we had the mayor's task force, which included council people and stakeholders. And I think what Mr. Bailey is looking forward to is for this purpose, what would be the best way about creating that? I do think it's important to have the stakeholder input. And as we were just talking, to have the neighborhoods, but wouldn't it be great if we could bring some investors to the table? So we're kind of looking to staff for the best way to bring those, and I think one of the things Mr. Bailey is probably thinking about too is we don't want to create stuff that no one is going to want to do. You know, like, so we need some buy-in. Is that kind of along the same line?
Yeah, I think it's very important for there to be stakeholder input, people who are residents of the neighborhood, different corridor sectors, whether it's a university, even people who have investment properties in neighborhoods, looking at it as a whole. Everybody who has an invested interest in Columbia should be a part of this task force, but there being specific policy developed that I think addresses some of the challenges with the growth, which is a good thing. I mean, you don't grow without having to buy a new pair of shoes when you outgrow your smaller ones, right? So these are some challenges I think that are necessary for a community and city to grow, but make sure we're just developing smartly moving forward. So going back to what Councilwoman Herbert said, yes, I think I don't want this to be a situation where it's just council members making decisions. I think it's important that all stakeholders come to the table and then policy being developed from there. And which is that? Is that an ad hoc committee or is that a task force? Or a combination of having both of them? So all this came up before the meeting today. So now we have to go back to the drawing board, unfortunately, I think, with some things, unless we can get some guidance, clear guidance today, and we can send it back to council for our next meeting. I'll prefer the latter.
Yes, sir. So I'm processing what you just said, and I think, for me and probably the staff, we're very outcomes driven. And so I would probably ask for, and we don't have to do this right now, but what are the outcomes we're looking for from this whole endeavor? So if the outcomes are to end up with ordinances that dictate certain things, then that might inform a little bit better. Obviously, the city attorney is here and we can talk about it, the makeup of the committee and how you would also have stakeholder input, but at the end of the day, obviously, you all are the policymakers, and only you can, end up voting on those policies, right? And so I think what I'm hearing you say is you want to get that feedback, you want to have that input along the way in this process, whether it's you've had an affordable housing task force. I'm not sure that the word task force or the words ad hoc committee are that different. I'm looking over at TK and Erica as far as how we've done things in the past. It's been multiple ways, right?
My thoughts were maybe that a task force could help give, I guess, the experiences that citizens are having in the corridors.
Okay.
And then the ad hoc committee would develop the policy after receiving not only input from people who are on the task force, but also the data that we collected. And then policy can be suggested to council as a whole, and it's either voted up or voted down, or it could be amended. But I think that's my thoughts on a makeup of what would allow stakeholder input, but also policy being developed. I don't see them happening, there being one or the other. I think it may be something where we need both, not only an ad hoc committee, but also a task force that allows for that stakeholder input.
And maybe, and I think that either one of them would need to sunset, right? So typically with your ad hoc committees or task forces, again, there's certain outcomes that you're trying to zone in on. Like we determine what those things are, and then we go through those processes and we get there. I'm trying to think of some examples. I don't know if like Quiet Zone would be a good example, Missy, of when we went through these processes of a task force.
Tax
or
modernization.
the tax modernization, and then they, some of them are more successful than others, is where we land with those outcomes, because the more clearly defined of what the outcomes are, the better I think we end up with where you end up wanting to be. I think the purpose as defined right here, and the conversations you had at the early part of this committee, and the conversations that were had this past Friday when we talked about affordable housing and got some resources and looked at other places and talked about, opportunities for authorizing language with state legislation. All of these things are broad topics that are kind of coming together. And for a task force typically, or an ad hoc committee, I think we may need to get a little more definitive on what it is you all are wanting us to help you accomplish. And then also the reason I say that is we're simultaneously talking about, I believe, moving some things forward with lots and multifamily and all the things. So I'm just always conscious too of, as you're having these conversations, but we're also saying we're ready to move on some things, the intersection of that, and giving this process, I guess, time to work if this is a process we're going to go down the path on.
So
Your consolidated plan is are these targeted areas going to be impacted by what we're talking about?
two things I would add to, so for instance, when we did the Affordable Housing Task Force, although we didn't officially shut it down, but once we got the main recommendations, we had two different committees. We wanted, what can we do from a developmental standpoint, and what can we do from advocacy? And we got recommendations under both. And right now, we're more or less implementing those recommendations, real high level, but it kind of gave us something to work with. The other thing I was going to suggest, because as opposed to putting the city manager on the spot today, is maybe if Councilman Bailey would allow, that you all give us something prior to our next council meeting, maybe 2 or 3 different formats or options so that we can choose from those. That way you don't have to come back. I don't think you have to come back here, but if it's going to take city council action, we get it prior to city council and have the ability to discuss. I just don't know if you're going to get we can get a solution. I don't know if it'll be the best solution if we try and do it right now. Is that fair?
I understand what you're saying.
Are you looking for at the end of the day, through whichever mechanism we use to get there, are you looking for clearly defined I'm going to say ordinances because of what the subject matter, that dictate neighborhood character? I'm looking at the things that are on here, how development is balanced in communities. Are you wanting to come out of it with very specific recommendations that then would be implemented by virtue of something going on the books in the city?
That's correct. And I think what may be most appropriate is that we leave the review of the referral to establish an ad hoc committee here until the plan is further developed and has specific purposes and outcomes, and it could be sent to this committee for either that it's recommended by community development and goes up to the council for a vote, but allow this process more time to work out so it's clearly defined and it's not just ideas and thoughts or issues that want to be addressed, but more so that the referral already has those plans set in place before it's sent to council. There was a thought that I had that it would be good to have that stakeholder input come up with the issues that the ad hoc committee would address, come up with the exact purpose of it, and then we would address from there. But it's more appropriate that we need to have that defined purpose of the ad hoc committee outlined in a document first before it goes to council, then that may be more appropriate.
And
Then
we-
rather, another option could be a task force coming up with those purposes and then the ad hoc committee addressing it. So, long story short, we're not ready, it's not ready to go to council from here.
Right.
We still have some work to do.
And I was going to say too, maybe general framing of the issues is a survey that Ms. Hammond is able to do through one of our survey kind of thing that goes to
survey one.
everybody, so that we can then narrow down what we do take to stakeholders. Does that kind of make sense? That way, everyone is heard, but we don't put everything, we have some kind of definition before we go out. That's just a thought. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I thought, yeah.
When's the next community development meeting?
Looking at August, the first Tuesday in August.
It's the 4th of July week, the next week.
Look at my calendar here.
And, yes, first Tuesday in August.
Yes, ma'am.
First Tuesday in August?
And that
Well,
would be August 6th.
I would like an opportunity for this item to remain or be placed on the agenda. And at that time, then, we have, 2 months from now?
Yes,
To
sir.
have all the purposes defined in the document for review of this committee and either tweaked from there or sent up to council to be voted on.
We can do a work group
Okay.
in July as opposed to committee meeting to kind of flush out some of the ideas. I'm good with that.
Okay.
We don't have to, I just.
No,
if we
I
want to
wasn't. I got multiple thoughts in my head. I'm sorry, Councilwoman. So I know there was the discussion of a meeting on Tuesday with all of council, which I haven't gotten confirmation if that discussion is still going to happen, or if we need to schedule that. But it would seem to have been a consensus of the council to meet on Tuesday about, not
Targeted.
this, but I guess.
Targeted area.
So, again, y'all don't feel like anything about this dictates those discussions moving forward?
Is that future targeted areas? What?
Mr. Brennan, that was
Yeah.
from our meeting on Friday.
uh,
Well, so I have talked to Mr. Bailey about how some of our forces, not task, but ad hoc, and I would want an expedited response, but I don't know if we would. So there's certain things that I wouldn't necessarily want to hold up if we don't have a amount of time that we know. So like if we knew in 3 months we would have a decision, that's one thing. If it may be a year, that's something totally different. So I think we may still have to have that meeting, maybe even to clarify what role this plays in that. I hate to have to do that, but I don't know if this dictates not doing that.
Okay,
I don't know. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm saying I don't know.
okay. I will
not-
follow
it's
up
not
with
my
all of
meeting
you.
either.
I know, that's why I'm saying, I know it's not your meeting, but, as I've continued to say, the discussions are relative to each other in some ways. And so I'm just, that's my job, to always kind of hearing it from all the different angles. So I'm just trying to make sure that conversations that happen on a committee level, and then they're rolling up into the full council, that it's
Right.
gonna make sense. Y'all's schedules are what they are. So like Mr. Brennan just said, from the Friday meeting, he
he
couldn't
really
be at that, so he wasn't aware of that potential for the meeting on Tuesday. So I will work on that to rally everybody together. The clerk and I will determine if that meeting's gonna happen on Tuesday. I think there's already some committee meetings on Tuesday as well, so we'll figure out your schedules. I have a sense that the mayor still wants to meet on Tuesday, was the last thing that he said to me. So we'll reach out and kind of get some direction.
I think what I would say is if there is still a decision to be finalized, then it would probably necessitate a meeting. Is that
Right.
fair?
That's fair enough. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Sorry, y'all.
And then, depending on, that how the discussion goes on Tuesday, notwithstanding that, we'll be planning for working discussions about this and getting to our next Community Development Committee meeting in August.
And I really need to double check that because we may have to do something, but it may not be a regular committee meeting because Felicia needs her information by August. So, we were going to have some work sessions anyway in preparation for that. But again, that goes to specifically spending the federal dollars.
For the
the
5-year.
consolidated.
Yeah, for the 5 years. So we have that.
Yeah, they're all, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all related in a way. So,
And what month is this? And we're already in June? Okay, so we said those meetings would be in July. Work sessions would be in July. I did say multiple. But I think that's also why we weren't having the big committee meeting. Because we didn't want to over-meet.
okay. And, and there's always so much to accomplish when we do come back to this discussion in August. Hopefully there'll be time dedicated for it on the agenda, because I do feel like, it's a lot to cover with some of the other items, so we'll, maybe plan accordingly, work with you on that part.
Yes, yeah. Yes. All of us will work better on that part.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I believe that is the last thing on the agenda. Ms. Hammond, note for the record, this is the longest Community Development Committee meeting that we that we have had to date.
Yes, ma'am.
Note that we normally keep them to an hour, and I want to thank everyone for their patience, but I think we had some good information today. And I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.